Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Dave Wiedis, and April is Autism Awareness Month, and our guest today is Amanda Charney, and Amanda is the Executive Director of Small Steps in Speech, and you're also a speech pathologist yourself.
Yeah, correct.
What is autism?
Okay. Autism is a neurological impairment of with children or any. It doesn't even have to deal with children. Autism deals with a neurological impairment for individuals that can target motor delays, behavioral concerns, speech and language disabilities, sensory weaknesses, and it really can be a spectrum of someone who might be very bright and intelligent, and then it can also go to 25% of those individuals really lack a lot of communication where they don't even have the voice to produce speech. So some of those individuals need some kind of a voice prosthesis in order to help them speak.
Wow.
And autism is on the rise. 1 out of 88 children today are diagnosed with autism.
Wow.
And there's striking findings that 1 in 52 boys are diagnosed with autism. So there's a high probability of boys versus girls who have autism.
What's the theory behind that? Why more boys than girls?
It really is unknown. There's a lot of research going on because autism is on the rise compared to where it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
We see so many more individuals that are being diagnosed with autism, and there is a wide spectrum. It's called autism spectrum disorder because there is such a spectrum of children who are functioning, but then they just have minor delays, and then there's the other spectrum of children who just have profound global delays, which go into, like I said, the behavioral problems, the learning problems, the social pragmatic piece, and the speech and language part as well.
Now, do the rates vary across the country?
I'm not sure. I can't really answer that.
Okay.
I know in the United States, though, that it is on the rise.
Yeah. So what are some of the initial signs of autism?
Researchers have actually seen that children, as starting at the age of 1, they're starting to see some type of interaction going on if someone might have autism, such as eye contact, children who aren't babbling at all, if parents are trying to interact with their child and laughing and giggling and the child isn't interacting with the parent, or even imitating of, clapping and different things like that.
Because babies naturally imitate the people in their environment.
They do.
I've noticed if you stick your tongue out at a baby, it starts sticking its tongue out. Yeah.
Or even if you start laughing with a child and you start tickling them, and they want to start to seek you out and ask for more, they start, walking over to you. Children with autism really lack a lot of those social cues. They lack a lot of that imitation, a lot of the verbal parts they lack. And the other thing with autism is that we have found that a lot of children start to have these indicators where they do start to talk, they do start to play, and then for some reason they just lose that skill.
Wow. Suddenly?
Suddenly, and there's really no reason why they lost that skill. So if a parent starts to see, that part, that's something that they definitely want to bring up to their pediatrician.
So it's actually possible for a child to have normal development for some time and then become autistic. Is that the right way to say it?
Well,
or develop autistic symptoms?
They do, right. Once they become about 2 years of age, researchers have seen that a lot of the children just stop talking, they stop interacting, they stop with the eye contact and different things like that. And that's where it's startling for a parent because they have known their child to speak and to do all of these different things, and then one day they just lose a lot of that, which is difficult for the parent.
Are there current theories as to the causes of autism?
There's so many different theories out there, but there's really no one known reason or cause for autism.
Okay.
There's a wonderful organization out there that's called Autism Speaks, and that has so much information for parents who have children with autism, for therapists, for teachers, anyone, even family members of someone who might know of a child who has autism. That is a wonderful organization that gives you statistics and places on where to go if you suspect that you know of a child or you have a child with autism.
Right. So if a excuse me, if a parent starts to notice some of these signs and symptoms, what do you advise them to do?
To go to their pediatrician and to really go and be honest with your pediatrician, to be able to say, these are my concerns, and they might refer them over to a developmental pediatrician to really see if their child might have autism, and there's different types of rating scales that they'll be able to give, or a neurologist. You might want to start there as well.
So that's how a formal diagnosis is then given?
Yes.
Okay.
Even me being a speech therapist, I can diagnose if a child has a type of speech and language disability, which autism, the statistics of someone who has autism will have some type of a communication disorder where speech therapy really plays a crucial role. And the more early intervention that you can get for these children, the more success rate that these children will have growing into adolescence and adulthood as well.
Talk a little bit about the interventions that are used.
Well, once you get that diagnosis, early intervention can come into play, where they can come into the home environment and really work with the child and the family regarding physical therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral help as well, because a lot of the children who have autism have some type of behavioral issues, whether it be crying or screaming or you know, hitting, even self-injurious behaviors a lot of these children with autism have. And the earlier that you can get the help, the better the family is and the child is in the long run.
So how do you approach a child? I'm just curious. You have a child who is not responsive, let's say, doesn't respond to cues, doesn't respond to his name, for example. What do you do as a therapist to try to get him involved?
A lot of the times, you know, even just play, you know, you have to find something that's very motivating for the child. We might think, you know, Play-Doh might be great for a 3-year-old, but to this particular child who has autism, that's something that's not motivating for them. So whether it be music or trains, a lot of children have a lot of desires for trains and locomotives and different things like that, and the parents would really know what a child likes, because a lot of the children who have autism really kind of like one particular thing, or they like one particular type of food versus, you know, other types of foods. So if you can try to use that as a reinforcement and try to work with the child during play and different things like that, just to get them used to interactions, that's key.
Right. So you do a lot of play therapy.
It is.
Yeah.
That becomes a lot, especially for children under the age of 3.
So it must be incredibly stressful for parents as well as siblings of a child who has autism. What kind of suggestions do you give them? What kind of therapies are available for them as well?
It can be very frustrating for the families, because a lot of these children who have autism might have speech, but it's not functional speech. So they're not even able to say if something hurts, they just start crying, and the family members don't understand why their child is crying. So again, if they can just go to a speech therapist who might be able to give them strategies of using pictures of emotions, that might help the family member be able to understand, you know, are you happy, are you sad, and really get the child familiar with different types of emotions.
Right.
And there's just a lot of, especially since autism is on the rise, there's so many different types of support groups for parents, and also support groups for siblings on how to have a relationship with your sibling who has autism. So a lot of the siblings and the parents just don't feel alone when they go to drop their child off to school and they see the typical developing child, and then, you know, they're bringing their child into a different classroom. There's lots of different types of support out there throughout the country.
Do you find the school systems are fairly well equipped to deal with children with autism?
And that varies depending on what types of schools, that the public schools in the different areas. I know that my public school is a wonderful resource for children with autism. We actually have children from sending districts that come to our school because we have 2 wonderful classrooms, 2 wonderful teachers who really know autism. They do a lot of research with autism, and their classroom assistants really understand autism as well. So it all depends. I think that the parents really have to get to know their school, get to know the school district, and really understand what classroom will be a best fit for their child, and also how their child can be mainstreamed as well, because you also want to have your child with autism be able to be around typical peers, if that's at all possible, so that they can maybe be able to carry over some of those typical behaviors from a typical child into their own repertoire.
So mainstreaming is putting the child with the regular class?
It is, and for some of the children who have autism who really have problems, going into those general education classrooms, you might want to even just start with having them go in during art class, where there's not such a high demand on the academics, but it could be more of a social piece as well. So that's somewhere where someone who has autism might want to start to be included in the regular ed.
Now, is treatment of autism typically covered by insurance companies?
And that varies depending on whoever your insurance carrier is. That is something that where my organization really has come into play as well, is because we have seen so many insurance carriers who might only be able to provide 10 therapy sessions, or even with autism, which is such a crucial part of development for these children, where autism isn't covered under a lot of these insurance carriers, which is very sad for not only the child but for the parents as well.
So parents have to become resourceful.
They do, and even going back to your insurance carrier and saying, here's my documentation from my neurologist, from my school district. My child has a profound disability with gross motor or speech and language. I want to appeal this. Can I go higher and make sure that, my insurance will really be able to cover what's needed for their child?
Right. They don't need to take no, the first no, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Can you, we have about two minutes left. Can you talk a little bit about some of your success stories with children with autism?
Sure. A lot of the children who I've seen firsthand with success really comes from where a child is motivated themselves. And not only the child is motivated, but also the parents are motivated. As speech therapists, we can only do so much for a lot of these children, and it really works on a lot of carryover. So we invite the parents to come into our treatments and even into the schools to be able to see firsthand how you can work with your child in a new way. Because a lot of that really works with carryover and different things like that.
So motivation is really one of the key things. And so what have you seen? Have you seen any transformations?
I've seen some children who have come into my therapy rooms who were completely nonverbal, and they just didn't have the motor production to produce speech. But due to speech therapy, due to their classroom environment of really pushing them, and to the parents, we program them on what's called an augmentative communication device, where they just might not be able to produce speech, and that's something that they might never be able to produce. But with intensive therapy and work in the classroom, they're able to use almost like a voice prosthesis, where they're able to build pictures and they're able to communicate what they want to eat for lunch, if they have to go to the bathroom, versus the people around them just assuming what they want to eat or that they have to go to the bathroom. These children are now able to use pictures as their meaning for communication, and that has been such a great success to see, which has been really decreasing a lot of their frustration as well, because they've been able to communicate.
It must be so joyful, right, to see a child who has been sort of trapped.
That's exactly the great key, is that sometimes they are trapped in their own world. They don't want to interact, and in 1 or 2 years you're able to see these children who are now wanting to play with other peers. They're wanting to interact. They want to show you. They'll pull your arm over to show you something that something that we never thought that a child with autism might be able to do. So just sharing an experience is huge.
Well, we thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful to understand it. Well, thank you for joining us in Joy in Our Town. We look forward to seeing you next time.